This episode of the podcast is sponsored by my friends over at Track Farms and their excellent CBD products. You're going to hear Steve and I talk about some of the things we do to recover from working out. And, I try not to be too obvious about plugging all the different things I do because there's such a wide variety. But CBD for me is a big one when it comes to recovering from working out or just doing any type of athletic outdoorsy endeavor. I really think that there's been a marked difference for me since I started using, not just since I started using CBD, because I've talked before about how there's other brands I've tried and they just do nothing for me. Literally since I started using Track Farms. These guys, they're the real deal. So if it's recovery from me going out shooting the bow or going on runs or whatever it might be, I'm looking for some CBD to help me control that inflammation and recover better from my workouts. And you're going to hear some about that on the episode, which I think you will enjoy. So check out Track Farms at track-farms.com/strangers. You use that promo code strangers in checkout and you will find yourself with 15% off of your order. Check them out. You'll love it. All right, we're rolling. Steve Schroeder, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Yeah, man. When is the last time I saw you in person? What's your guess?
Probably when we graduated high school, I think. That would have been in 2012. Jeez.
Yeah, it would have had to have been. Yeah, that's been a minute. Like we're almost a decade later, and still going strong. It's good to hear from you, man. You have been doing some really cool things, and we've all gotten to see on the Instagram all your awesome Navy adventures. Just to give people some background, I suppose I should probably start there. Just that Steve and I were really good friends in high school, and he went off and did some insane things in the Navy, and now he's flying helicopters. And I was like, we should do a podcast about this because I think flying helicopters sounds really fucking cool.
Yeah, it has its good days for sure. There are some really, really exciting times that come along with it.
Yeah. So you're back. Are you back home now then?
Yeah. I just got back last Wednesday. We flew off the ship and back into Norfolk, where we're stationed at. And ever since then, this past week, I've just been trying to get my life back together. Just upgrading a few things and unpacking and just kind of getting used to being in this new society in a new COVID world. We got a lot of training about it and we heard all about it, but it's really interesting because we were out at sea when all of it started and when all the changes
Whoa.
starting implementing in society. So I just kind of like missed it and then came back to a completely different world that we left.
Wow. So you've been out for a while. When did you take off on this deployment?
January was when I started.
Yeah.
January 16th
Yeah.
was the day that we left out of Norfolk, and I had a little interim in February. I had to come back and stand up the CLFDET, which is Combat Logistics Forces. So I was on a supply ship for this deployment where we resupplied all the ships in the Middle East and in the Mediterranean and wherever there was a ship that needed us. And we were ready to provide like food, fuel, ammunition, bombs, whatever ship needed for us to transport via helicopter.
That's awesome. And it's so weird. I feel like mid-January, that was just when whispers of this whole thing were just like starting to happen and when nobody knew what was going to go down. So you've just been hearing about it. Are you guys like, here's what I'm trying to figure out would be then, since you're supplying other ships, it's not like you guys were quarantined on the ship you were on. Like it would have been easy enough if you had all taken out there and no one has COVID on this ship, and so we know no one's going to get it. But since you're in contact with those other ships, I guess there was a possibility where you guys like wearing masks and having to do things while you were out there.
So it was interesting how we did it. We technically were a bubble, is what it was called, and we didn't go to shore ever. We never let down a gangway, which is the steps that go off the ship onto land. We just pulled up to a port, and they would crane on all the supplies to us that we needed. People never went on shore to do anything. So we never got to set foot on land for probably a good 6 or 7 months once it
Whoa.
all started, and the
Jeez.
aircraft carrier that we were attached to, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, they never pulled in to port ever since January 16th all the way through August 9th. They pulled in. So they
Oh
broke a lot of
man.
records for how long a ship has been out to sea continuously. So we just kept resupplying them and giving them what they needed, and they never had to come in near shore, which was amazing because of all this. So it was a good proof of concept that American military ships can stay out to sea indefinitely, which is a huge advantage, and it shows how well the system works. But at the same time, you're out at sea that whole time, and it's life at sea is not the easiest. So it comes with all those
Yeah.
challenges.
You've got to be going just totally stir crazy when you can't even like head out and see a few different things or stop every now and then. It's like join the Navy, see the world, right? And the idea would be eventually you get to maybe stop and see something that's not just ocean. Um, that's got to be an extra tough deployment.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was everybody that I talked to that had been on multiple deployments before me, because this was my first deployment, but I was with a bunch of guys that had deployed 3 or 4 times before this. And they said this is not normal what we're doing right now. We usually pull into port like every week, and then we get like 2 or 3 days to explore the area, take a break, and then we get back on and go out to sea for a few days, like 5 or 6 days at a time. And then we pull back into port, just rinse and repeat. It's great. Uh, we don't stay out to sea this long. This is not normal. Um, so it was. I didn't know any different when I was on the ship. I was like, huh, this is great because it's a supply ship. It's a civilian run vessel. It's not a warship, so it has a
Right.
lot more creature comforts that made daily living, a lot easier in that respect. Like I had my own room, I had my own bathroom to myself, um, but we still had a lot of challenges about living out to sea that were still there, and it became apparent when we went 2 months straight being out to sea and not um, getting to go back to shore and refresh and restock on things that we could buy in a store. So there were a lot of
Yeah.
challenges we had to overcome, like communications and basic supplies like toiletries. We started to run out.
Right.
I mean, we'd
So
start
did
to run
we.
out of food towards the end. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy that all those basic things that we kind of take for granted, and all of a sudden it's running low or not available, and it really really goes to show just how fragile that really is.
Yeah, no doubt. I think everybody's been feeling that all over the country during this time, when all of a sudden you'd go out and then you couldn't just buy toilet paper, and it was like, am I gonna be able to buy toilet paper at some point? Like, generally appreciate using it over not using it. It's just it's been odd, but obviously so much less to complain about here than probably some of the stuff you guys were dealing with. Did so? Where's home for you now?
I live in Norfolk, Virginia, in an area of town called East Beach. I live just 5 minute walk away from the Chesapeake Bay, and it's a very different lifestyle than what I was used to when we all lived in Monticello, Illinois. It's right by the beach. It's a much different climate than I was used to, and it's a pretty big city. It's about 300,000 people in the city, and that's just the city itself of Norfolk. You've got Virginia Beach, which is a whole other city, and the suburbia surrounding. So it's a very large metropolitan area.
Do you like it?
I do like it, actually. I enjoy it a lot. It's got a lot of different restaurants and stores and a lot to offer. I mean, the Outer Banks are just an hour and a half drive to the south, like vacation wonderland. And you've got
Yeah,
the Appalachian Mountains, a 3 hour drive to the west. I've taken a couple trips to Shenandoah, amazing hiking, of course, and camping. And DC is 3 hour drive to the north. I visit there all the time because my girlfriend lives up and works in the DC area. So I really love it. I love everything that it has to offer. I like the East Coast. I've really enjoyed it.
that's awesome. I mean, I think we had a great place to grow up at. I mean, Monticello is excellent. There's awesome outdoor places, and there's sort of just enough. You're just close enough to some bigger things that you feel like you have access to anything that you could want. So we're not like so far out in the boonies that it's impossible to do anything fun. But I'm with you, man. I don't know if I could have lived in Monticello forever, There's just so many other things out there to see.
Yeah, it was an awesome place to be from. I mean, it helped. I think it helped shaped me and my perspective coming to these larger areas and being able to appreciate it, having it right there. And
Right.
Monticello was great and unique because you're right, it was close to those bigger areas. Like it's only what 3 hours south of Chicago. Then we had Champaign
Yeah.
Urbana with the U of I right there. Like it was great. We had access to all of those big things, but we still were in our own small town community.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it was awesome to grow up in that. And we had that tight knit, um, just a sense of community, and everyone knew each other. And it was good. It was really good. And we had a lot of fun. I think the years we were in high school, we were a good class. We were a really, really good class of just like awesome people. And it's been so much fun to watch everybody spread out and see where they go.
Yeah, we've got classmates doing a lot of really cool things. And so you went straight to the Naval Academy out of high school, right? Or am I remembering that wrong?
Oh, yeah. 2 weeks after we graduated, I was off to Maryland.
2 weeks. That's awesome. Okay, so
Yeah.
it was full Navy for without a moment's hesitation. The thing I was always curious about too was, in high school I felt like you had such a diverse range of interests, and for people who wouldn't know this about you, you were quite a talented guitar player and singer. You were an amazing runner. You just won about every cross country thing you could win. Um, that was I feel like you had such a broad range of things you were doing, and then going into the Navy, like from my perspective, doubtless you had the discipline. Like you have discipline as a person because you couldn't have been doing the athletics you were doing or even making the music you were making without that level of discipline. But I feel like you were also really free spirited and just like wanted to have fun quite a lot. Does the Navy kind of work with that? Or I would feel like it's real buttoned up, kind of, you don't get to do a lot of that random exploring stuff, but that's just my perspective. What's this been like?
Uh, I think you're very close to what it's been like for this whole maturation process that I've gone through since graduating high school. I think you're right. The broad range of interests was definitely a big part of me, and I always wanted to be able to do something different at any given moment and have those available to me. But going to the Naval Academy, it was a major challenge to have to specify. You focused on your military obligations, your academics, and your athletics, and that's pretty much
Mm-hmm.
all I had when I was there. I kind of dropped playing guitar. I was in the Glee Club for the first semester, which was really fun. It was really cool, but it was such a large time commitment that I had to drop that too. So I pretty much distilled my efforts into athletics, academics, and military training.
I
And
wouldn't
that
have
was
even
very
known the
difficult for
Navy has a
me.
glee club.
Yeah, the men's Naval Academy Men's Glee Club. You can look them up. They've got recordings and music, and they perform all over the place. I actually got to do a really cool performance with them. That was kind of my last gig that we did. We did Christmas in Washington. Uh, in was it 2012? Yeah, that was in winter of 2012, and we got to perform in Washington D.C., like near the mall. And Obama came, and the vice president came, and Conan O'Brien hosted it. And I got to meet all of them that night.
That's
We were
so
just
cool, man.
singing our hearts out all night, and then there was an after party where there was like Washington's who's who was there, and it was a crazy experience. It was a lot of fun. But that was the last gig I ever did with them because they were going to start touring like all over the place and go on long trips. And it was like, well, I'm not going to be able to compete. I'm not going to be able to run. Like, I need to do that too. And so I kind of had to make a choice because my grades were kind of riding the line on that. I was trying to make it work with academics, balancing that, and just kept having to peel back those parts of me in order to meet the standard on those hard points, which were academics, military training, and I decided to keep athletics. So it was
Right.
tough. It
So,
it did get kind of tough there.
yeah. Do you feel like now that you are into this next phase, you've done your first deployment, things like that, you get to do a little more of the stuff that you're into? Like you have a little more time for yourself when you're not on deployment? Or like, does it get better?
It's kind of funny because being a pilot, I thought after graduating from the academy that, oh, great, I can find other hobbies and I'll have all this time and I'm getting paid real money now. Like, I'm a big boy. I can make my own decisions. And I got into flight school and I moved down to Pensacola a couple months after I graduated from the academy. I stayed in Annapolis and worked that summer on the Naval Academy grounds as a PE instructor and generally just helping out in the department there. And then I moved to Pensacola in that September of 2016 and started flight school. And little did I know how big of a commitment flight school was because
Mm,
I never really wanted or set out to become a pilot. Most guys that become pilots in the military, like that's what they wanted to do for a long time. That's like their thing. They are going to be a pilot. Me, not so much. It was kind of unexpected. It was a route that kind of presented itself to me rather than me seeking it out. And I kind of let fate take the reins on that one and saw what happened. And I kept making the standard. I kept passing all my flights. And I was like, man, I keep learning this and I keep getting better at it. And I guess I'll keep doing it. Not a bad gig, you know. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else in the military. I think I'm right where I belong, flying helicopters. But it was a big time crunch. I didn't have as much time to do what I wanted to do, but I still made it work. I still had spare time, and Pensacola is a great playground for a young person. That's where I got into cycling, and I really discovered a love for that passion and found something else that I could get good at and um, embark on another adventure there.
right. Oh, so what were those courses of events that just led you to happening to go to flight school and pursue that route? You said it just kind of things just kind of like started clicking together for that. But I was curious, like, what steered you that way?
Well, the interesting thing about the Naval Academy is they force you to find out what you want to be when you grow up, your senior year at the academy. And I hadn't really figured it out yet because I tried going the special warfare route. I did a couple of the screening processes for like SEALs. Went through that, and through that process, I realized that's not the lifestyle or the occupation that's going to be the best thing for me. I'm glad I've realized that early because I don't think I'd be happy doing that right now. For other guys, it's the best thing they could do, and I'm really happy for those guys. But I realized that I needed to do something different. But it took me a little while to figure out what it is I wanted to do. So I kind of tried to figure out, well, what don't I want to do? It's like, well, I don't necessarily want to be surface because then I'll be on a ship and I don't know if I'll enjoy that. So, and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if I want to be a Marine because I'll be on the ground. And I got some experience working in each department of what the Navy has to offer. Every summer, we'd do training events and blocks where we would get exposed to what it would be like to be in that community. And when I worked in aviation, I actually got to go down to a jet base and fly in training jets down in Texas and had a really cool experience and got to see like this is the apex of naval aviation. And I was like, you know what? This is pretty cool. I think I could do this. I don't know if I want to do it forever, but if this is what I'm going to do for the Navy, I think I could make it work and it'll be a really cool adventure. And that's kind of how I came to the decision that I will go for the aviation route. Didn't settle in on helicopters until I got into flight school and realized that like I think helicopters are awesome. They are just so freaking cool. The things that they can do and like it's just such a unique skill. Like where else are you going to learn how to fly helicopters? Like it's just
Yeah.
a wild adventure. And you know, if I get out when I'm in my early 30s, like I don't know, 30 is the new 20, you know? So I'd be like, I can still go and reinvent myself and have these awesome stories behind me. So I think it's a whole mix of uh, elements that lead me into being happy with the decisions that I made, and I'm right where I need to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for a guy that's in the shape that you're in, yeah, you'll be fine. I think at 30 to not feel too old just yet. Um, I think that's probably true for anybody who has any commitment to health on any level. Which, for you, you know, I know happened quite early on. I didn't come to health until well after college. But once you're there and you're in that place where you're like, oh, this is what taking care of myself actually looks like. it makes it changes how you view like aging in general. So I totally get kind of what you mean there. So
Hmm.
I'm right in thinking that then flying helicopters, that's quite different than from flying planes. But do you learn how to do both and then you just kind of end up specializing, or do you pick like outright and you're like, all right, helicopters, that's where it's at?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's really interesting because naval uh, aviation, the training pipeline and their flight school, it's unique because we do all learn how to fly a fixed wing aircraft before we go to rotary wing. So we got to learn how to fly a single engine turboprop aircraft, which is the T6. Everybody goes through that, which, if you look it up, it's basically a souped up modern version of a World War II fighter airplane. And they're
Okay.
it's a freaking Ferrari of an aircraft. It's overpowered, it's super light, and it can go. It's got a lot of juice to it, and it's a lot of aircraft to handle. And it is really used to weed out the wheat from the chaff in flight school because it's a filter at that stage in flight school. They're trying to see who can handle this and who can keep up with the pace of learning and the operations and how to handle an aircraft. And it's pretty amazing. You go from absolutely knowing nothing about how to fly, and 12 flights later, you're signing for that aircraft yourself and taking it by yourself without an instructor to help you. So
Jeez.
it's a fire hose, and they expect a lot out of you from the very beginning to weed you out and be like, okay, can this guy one day take command of an aircraft in a military environment and execute missions while like
Yeah.
at command of this aircraft. That's what they're trying to get to. So you go through that process, and there's a whole syllabus we go through to get qualified on that aircraft. And once you complete that, that's called primary training. And then you move on to what's called the advanced portion of flight school, and that's when you specify. So if you go select for helicopters, then you go down the street on that same base and you go to the helicopter side of it and you learn how to fly helicopters. But if you select big wing, which would be like reconnaissance planes. They're basically 737s that you could go fly. Then you'd go down to Texas and learn how to fly the multi-engine aircraft. But you can also select jets, and then they take you out to Texas or to Mississippi to actually learn how to fly a jet. So
Do you
it kind of
mostly
whittles
get your
down.
pick? Like, do most people
Uh,
get their preference?
It depends on timing. You can put in your preferences.
Mm,
So that's what the Navy's all about. You can put your preferences in, but the needs of the Navy, that's kind of the trite saying. Uh, you'll go where they need you to. And when I was going through flight school, it was impossible to get anything because there was an oxygen system issue that was running rampant through the jet community, the training pipeline, and so they weren't taking anybody in the jet pipeline because they didn't need anybody. They weren't flying anymore. They were trying to fix that problem.
mm,
So during my time, it was impossible to get jets. Only like one person every class was getting selected, vice multiple people. Like now, the pipeline's open back up, and it's a lot more realistic for people to get selected for jets. But that wasn't a problem for me because I wanted helicopters, so it was easy.
yeah.
I got my first pick.
Yeah. Man, I feel like okay, so I'm always like kind of amazed by the physics of planes in general. I'm honestly glad that I don't have to get on any these days anymore. Like now that Andrea and I are in the RV full time, it's like, all right, I never
Hmm.
have to fly again. Because it just seems kind of ridiculous that you take this bus and you're like, this bus is just gonna float now above the earth. And listen, I understand that there's science that makes that work and physics, and I'm not a dummy, but it just seems wrong. You know what I mean? To me, there's a part of it that's just messed up. I mean, I looked up the T6. That thing has what is it? Is a 45-foot wingspan. No, 42-foot wingspan. Cruising speed is 145 miles an hour. Top speed is 208 miles an hour. So it'd be like the length of the RV I live in, but you take that up into the sky and it weighs about the same, and you just go 200 miles with it. That's freaky, right? I'm not the only person just on a human level that's like, what is that? Why is that?
Yeah, the
How do they do that?
first flight I ever took in that thing, I was so scared. I was terrified for my life because you're sitting on ejection seats too the whole time. So you're sitting on a rocket and you pull that handle near your crotch and you'll go for the ride of your life, and you might
Oh
be an
no.
inch shorter for the rest of your life. No big deal.
Oh
Uh,
no. Do
it's
Do you get nauseous up there, or are you pretty good about it?
Oh, I had a lot of problems with air sickness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of theories about how air sickness works, but it's just like you get mismatched um, signals between your brain and the rest of your body, and your inner
Uh
ear
huh.
is where it all happens. And when you're moving in three dimensions like that in an airplane, and you're feeling all these different forces go on, your inner ear can get very confused, sending mixed signals to your brain, and the way your body responds to that is it goes back to a primal urge to where it thinks it's been poisoned. And how does your body
Mm-hmm.
get rid of poison real quick? It ejects anything that's inside of you that could be poisonous. So you vomit, and as you can imagine, throwing up into an aircraft moving at 200 miles an hour, also wearing an oxygen mask, which is giving you air, and if you take it off, you might not have the air that you need to stay conscious. It's a pretty interesting situation, mix of events that
Do you just get
very
used to it?
quickly.
Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, you get
Really?
essentially how I thought about it. I took my athlete mindset and thought, okay, I need to get fit to fly. Like, I need to be adapted to this. So, what they do is they have a air sickness adaptation program in flight school where you basically sit in a chair and they spin you around for a long time and you keep getting sick until you don't get sick anymore. And that's what I did. I
Oh,
spent about a month in that spin. They call it the spin chair. It's like, oh man, you got
no.
to go do the spin chair. Oh, dude. And it was an
Holy
adventure.
shit. Oh, that sounds like torture. Oh man,
Yeah.
just sit me down and waterboard me for a few hours instead. Man. Oh
Yeah, it's
Jesus.
all a part of it. It's all a part of it. There were some people that quit flight school because they couldn't adapt. They're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do it. And luckily, helicopters don't have that problem. People don't really get airsick in helicopters because you're not moving all over the place as aggressively
Right.
as a fixed wing aircraft can do. You have a lot more visual references to the ground, and it it just flies in a more benign flight profile than a jet would.
Right. Right. Do you have you flown in some pretty gnarly weather out there?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're naval aviators. What else is unique about a Navy pilot is that we're instrument rated. So we get trained to fly into the clouds completely blind from the outside and just looking at our screens on our instruments. Um, it was really interesting because out in the Middle East, it is very, very hazy and foggy all the time because it's so humid. It could be a bright and sunny day, middle of summer, and the sun is out and there's not a cloud in the sky, but you can't see a mile out from you because it's so hazy and foggy. There's sand in the air, sea spray, everything. So we couldn't see hardly anything outside of us, even during the daytime. But the most challenging environment to fly in that we train to all the time that makes us unique as naval aviators is that we fly at night over water and it's pitch
Mm-hmm.
black out there. We couldn't see anything, absolutely nothing that we could see
Right.
outside. So we were completely inside on the screens, and we had night vision goggles to help us see ships out there on the ocean, so we could see little dots out in the distance, and that would be a reference point to be like, okay, there's a ship over there, and we'd fly for our home ship to land on that. And it was just a single spot that we could land on, probably about the size of a quarter of a football field, maybe. It was a pretty small spot to land one helicopter
Uh-huh.
on. There's room for one, so
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
challenging. I think that was the most challenging flight environment I've been in, was flying on those dark, dark nights, and we would land on a single spot ship.
So probably back when we were in high school, I remember there was a show on PBS called Carrier. I don't know if you ever saw this. It was like a docu series that I was totally into. That just showed literally like one deployment on the USS Nimitz, um, when they took off and went out in the Persian Gulf for a while. And it was so well made that watching that show, at least me as a high schooler, I was like, okay, I want to do that. Like Navy pilot, that sounds awesome. That seems really cool. And then there was one episode where that changed for me. I think it was one where they're landing at night and they have like this massive pitching deck on the carrier and they're trying to land F-18s on it. And you're watching like the whole deck of the ship go up like 30 feet and then down 30 feet. And I was like, nah, just kidding, never mind, because that seems impossible to me. And that's just naval aviation, right? Is it's just like okay, you can no longer land on the ground. Like even if you could land on the ground and we just made it a small circle, that's different than when you've got a pitching deck and the situation's constantly changing and your actual landing place is moving as you go. That's just what you live with out there.
Yeah, I mean that every single day. We always check the sea state and the winds, and all those elements have to come together in order to give you a safe as possible flight profile for you to take off and land. And you're right, that is what makes it unique about naval aviators, and some would argue that's why we're the best, of course. Is that we always have to land at a specific spot on a ship out in the middle of the ocean, and no matter what the conditions are, we got to put it back down because
Yeah,
we got to
because
bring
where
it
else are
back
you gonna go?
home. You know?
Yeah,
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 yeah. That is the plan. It's like, well, what's the plan? This spot. This spot's the plan. This is where we're landing.
yeah.
Like, gotta
This is plan
gotta make
A,
it
B,
work.
C, and D, and just get there, because otherwise
Yeah,
it's the ocean, and that's not an option.
yeah. Some of the scariest spots to land to would be like a destroyer or a cruiser. Those are very small spots, and they pitch and roll even more so than an aircraft carrier. They are like all over the place, and they can be very challenging. You have to time it right. You just stay over the deck of the ship, and you can hover over it because that's what helicopters can do, vice jets. And we just wait, and we're like, okay, now, and then we let it go and we bring it on down. And that's typically what helicopters do to help mitigate that. But jets have it tough because they got to keep moving, or else they stop flying.
Yeah, exactly. So what was the I guess I was curious what the impetus was for the Navy in the first place. I don't remember if it was something that you had talked about with me at least until I found out you were doing it. How did that come about?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised too that I decided to go through with it. I think I was just drawn to the Navy because of all of the options that it had, all of the different missions that they do. It was just so unique and it was different. It was fascinating. Like us growing up in Monticello, it's not a very big Navy town, you know? Everybody's heard of West Point, but no, not everyone had heard of Annapolis. So I was like, that's unique, it's different, and it's an adventure. You know, it was kind of just the sense of adventure and a challenge because I I was always drawn to the aspect of it being a cut above. You know, they're high standard, and to make it from here requires a lot of dedication and gumption and taking a risk, take a chance on yourself, and that was very attractive to me. And I could also get everything that I wanted out of a college experience there. I wanted military experience. I wanted to run at a Division I level, and I wanted to be somewhere that was new and completely different than what I had known in Central Illinois. And I think Annapolis, Maryland met all of those criteria for me. And it was a grand adventure, and it was a challenge, and I got everything that I wanted to out of those years.
Yeah. And so your sport then at the Naval Academy was cross country, I'm assuming. Um, what so you were competing at that level. Was that the whole time you were at the Naval Academy?
Yep, from day one, showing up at the Naval Academy to the last day. It actually caused me to miss my graduation because of track and field. I had to graduate a few days late. Um, yeah, that was a huge part of my life while I was there because it was one of the only things that I really had time for um,
Yeah.
outside of school and military training, and then there was running. And I really poured myself into it because I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to be doing a job for the Navy after this, I might not have free time and the ability to train and make a go of a post collegiate athlete. Um, so I really put a lot of work into it. I
Yeah.
ran every single season. We were three sport, uh, 3 season sport there. We did cross country in the fall, indoor track in the winter time, and then outdoor track in the spring. And then really the only month we had off without any races or competition getting ready for was July. So it was busy, definitely busy.
Yeah.
Always another race around the corner.
Are you still running now?
Yeah, I do run. I also I got into cycling. I've been trying
Right.
to just learn how to have fun with being athletic and having
Mhm.
the ability to go out and just enjoy. moving, being outside, and using my body to have fun. Like it used to be such a chore. Like you got to get in your 8 mile run today. Like it's an easy day. You got to get
Hmm.
in the miles, or oh, it's a track workout today. Got to get on out there and get some intervals in. And if I don't hit this standard, then I'm falling behind. Or oh gosh, am I out of shape? Or oh man, am I overtraining? Like it was a hard lifestyle to constantly
Yeah.
monitor my performance and my body status of where I was at. And I've kind of gotten away from that, trying to reconnect with a healthy relationship with my body and athleticism and just enjoying it. Like just this morning before I got back home to talk to you, I was out riding bikes with my friends on the countryside, and I was just enjoying being out socializing with my buddies and riding my bike through the countryside and enjoying the views and just having fun. I didn't used to do that. I wasn't able to do that. So
Right.
it's been a it's been a good process getting back to enjoying myself and using those skills and that um, in tune that those skills to be in tune with my body to be able to enjoy it.
Yeah, it's different when it's for a competitive reason, and it's all about, I don't know, you're tracking so many things because you're dealing with trying to, max out your perfection as much as possible instead of just sort of some of the most primal things about getting out and running or even getting out and cycling, where it's like, this is about connection, this is about being outside, this is about taking care of your body a lot more than it is when it's about winning. um, it's just a different circumstance entirely. So for
Yeah,
anybody who doesn't already have a sense that as a Division 1 cross country runner you were doing pretty good, what's your I'm gonna give you an opportunity where you have to brag on yourself because it's just straight facts. So when you go out for one of your calm 8 mile runs, what's like a pace you're doing on like a just a solid run?
like right now or back when I was competing.
Let's say back then.
Back then, easy pace was about 6:20 a mile, and
Jesus
if we were feeling our oats, we might get dip under 6 minute pace. And there were times when I was just cruising at like 5:30 pace and was barely huffing and puffing. Yeah, I was just barely huffing and puffing when I was
Jeez.
running at 5:30 pace. Those were good days. But if I was not feeling good and I was really want to take it easy, we'd go 7 minute pace, keep it around there, and that was jogging for us.
What's the have you ever timed your PR mile?
Oh yeah, I've got all my PRs still. I memorize them. I hold on to them. They're accomplishments.
what's
Uh,
your
I
PR?
my best mile that I ever ran at the academy was 4 flat .77.
Jesus.
Yeah, that was actually good enough to break the school record. Um, so I had that for a little while. It actually just got broken this past year. Uh, there was a kid that finally ran under 4 minutes for the mile, Jake Brophy. So I was on that grind for a bit, trying to be the first midshipman from the Naval Academy to break 4 minutes in the mile, but didn't quite get it. But along the process, I ran some really good races.
This is nuts to me because I've never been anywhere close to doing something like that. I think the best I ever got to was like a maybe a 5:30 mile once ever. But you're getting near like world record type stuff. I just looked it up. It's 3:43:13. It's to any normal human, I'm sure to you there's a lot of nuance between 3 minutes and 45 seconds and 4 minutes, but for the rest of us, it's like, okay, so you're basically in the same realm. That's just absolutely nuts to me, man. Did I guess your progression there was always really interesting too, and I feel like at least back in high school, it was just always that you worked harder than anyone else. Like you just said, "This is what I'm going to do," and you were always working harder than anyone, getting out there after it. But what drives you to do something like that?
Um, yeah, I think that back in high school, it was a simple formula. I run more, I do better, and that was kind of it. It was very simple. But in college, there's only so much you can do before you start to go over the edge. And I found that
Yeah.
out the hard way my sophomore year. I was going crazy. I was running 120 miles a week. I was getting up and running 7 miles before breakfast, and then we'd go and run another 10 to 12 miles in the afternoon. And I'd lift weights. I was doing absolutely everything I could, but I wasn't getting sleep. I wasn't doing as well in my studies, and there was a challenge finding the balance of like what is best for me to sustain over a long period of time, and how do you continue making improvements while keeping it at a certain level of volume and without overworking yourself, because there is such a thing as too much. And that's when I learned the value of recovery and specificity and making use of the time and energy that you have when uh, training. So it really came down to like the specific types of workouts that I was doing to help instill confidence and get the right stimulus for the body to prepare it to race, as well as
What's your
recovering properly.
what's your strategy for that recovery?
It starts with getting enough sleep, get plenty of sleep, because that is the best way to reset your body and recover. It does all of its repairs when you're in that resting state. You're never going to get as much recovery value out of anything that you do if you're not getting enough sleep. So that's the baseline. The other part of it is just eating right. I'm sure you've found this out too, that you just feel better when you eat right and you eat normal, whole foods and make your own meals yourself. Make those basic decisions of eating good, normal, healthy food, and it makes such a big difference. And eating enough, not being afraid to eat more based on what you need. I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, especially in athletics and most notably distance running, and I experienced it myself, we have a tendency to want to get leaner and leaner and leaner, thinking that that's going to result in better performance. But if you're not
Right.
giving your body the fuel it needs, if you're starving it of what it needs, um, then you're not going to get the performance that you desire. And restricting calories and food volume over a long period of time, it can be an insidious process to where you're just fatiguing yourself over a long period of time, and that's very difficult to come back from, to
Yeah.
get back to normal and do what you need. So those are some of the major lessons that I learned, and I didn't really learn that until my senior year at the academy when I started doing very specific workouts that were tailored to that specificity of running a faster mile. I hadn't been doing that before. I got a little bit different coaching during that time. I was eating more. Like the best I was running, I wasn't paying attention to like every little thing that I was eating. I was just eating to feel good, and eating to
Mm-hmm.
perform. And like I didn't stress out over exactly what I was eating. Like, oh my gosh, I had an extra handful of almonds tonight. I ate too much. Or oh my gosh, I had ranch on my salad instead of oil and vinegar. Like, oh
Oh
my gosh,
no.
it's I'm gonna get fat. It's like, but that's the extent to what I was tracking my food to and how I felt with my relationship with
Yeah.
food and the performance diet relationship. That's how twisted it got. But when I
Right.
relaxed it and I wasn't so worried, um, I performed better, because I like to remember this to tell people when I ran my best 5K ever, it was at a track meet in Princeton. Um, it was a 5K. I ran my best 5K ever there. I ran 14:02. Didn't have any expectation to go out and run that fast of a time. Um, and for lunch that day, I had a half frozen tuna sandwich from the grocery store that did not taste good at all. And then right before the race, I had a peanut butter and honey sandwich on white bread and a strawberry Pop Tart. And then the magic happened.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
amazing to me that like, oh my gosh, I run my best when I'm not freaking out about food and diet. I'm just focused on performing the race, and my body will focus on what it needs to get me there.
Yeah, it's holistic. It's the fact that your whole body's tied together, including your brain, which would be a major contributor to doing amazing things. Um, because if you're actually giving your brain the right sort of outlook, that right, so you get that Zen put together in the right ways, that can be just as big a contributor as having the extra handful of almonds or not. Like it's just all tied together. Do you this is one of the things that would drive me, I think, crazy about military life, which would be the food. Because not in terms of quality, but I'm talking in terms of literally, I'm so selective with everything I eat now. I'm a big food, uh, I don't know, nutrition junkie, I guess, and so like I've gone so deep down this rabbit hole, Steve. It's dangerous. But the thing for me would be not having control over just about everything I cook and how I cook it and how I'm going to eat it and when I'm going to eat it. For me, the ability to cook in my own kitchen every day is huge. But you don't get that level of control, especially I'm sure not when you're on deployment, then probably not even when you're at the Naval Academy. Do you cope with that well? Does that work okay for you?
Yeah, that is a really good point. I did have a lot of trouble with controlling the food that I ate because it was always being served to me, and I didn't
Yeah,
have an option of what to choose necessarily. It's like what you see is what you get.
right.
If they're having fried chicken for lunch that day, that's what you have available, eat
That's
it
what
or
there is
not.
for lunch. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a struggle. So you start to figure out creative ways to control what you can control. So let's go back to the fried chicken example. If they have fried chicken, just take the skin off, and then you've got lean protein,
Right.
and you accept that. It's not ideal, but you accept it. And in the mornings and breakfast, like if they just have sugary cereal available, go and look to see if they've got generic cereal somewhere. Find some plain Cheerios and that's what you can have. Or they've got eggs. That's good. That's a great choice to make. So you just kind of learn the patterns of what they serve and what is going to be available, and you start to choose what works best for you. And it takes time and it takes patience to figure those things out. So I knew what worked best for me, and that's how I got to like my perfect trifecta of breakfast that I still like to adhere to, which I do oatmeal, eggs, and fruit for breakfast, and that makes me feel great every single time without fail. If
Mm-hmm.
I have a small bowl of oatmeal with fruit, assorted fruits, and then two eggs anyway, like can't go wrong with it. And I would feel great
Yeah,
from
and
that.
you
And
can
that was
pretty
my
much find that
formula.
anywhere.
Yeah,
And I mean,
yeah,
most cafeterias you can pretty much make that. Even most hotels you can pretty much work that one out.
yeah,
It's not too hard to figure out. And at the end of the day too, you can. It's easy to buy oats, so you have them, and all you need is some hot water, and you're good to go. Um,
yeah. That was another
yeah.
method that I did on deployment was you can get care packages and people can send you things to help you
Mm-hmm.
out. And so, yeah, I would ask for oatmeal. I'd ask for cinnamon, vanilla, coconut oil, things to have those creature comforts and have a little bit higher quality of food that you know will work for you. And
Yeah.
I did that a lot. I made my own food in my room all the time at the academy. Like I snuck in hot water heater into my room, and I had oatmeal. I had a whole kitchen in there,
Yeah.
and I would take things from the cafeteria like milk, fruit, all those things, and I'd take it up to my room, and I'd just make my oatmeal in there and have hard-boiled eggs, and that was it. That was my breakfast. That's how I got started, and that's what I did. It worked.
That's honestly, like in my imagination, there's actually like a perfect job for me that I would love to do, which would be like helping to institute better food programs for high performance athletes or even special operations guys. Because I just think about like the level you guys need to perform at, and it's not going to be your normal cafeteria food that everyone else is pleased with each day. Like there's a way to do that really really right. That's my imaginary job. So if you ever hear of an opening, you call me because I'd love to do it. It'd be a lot of fun. Just like
Yeah, the
just like putting together the best things so that you know you guys can go out there and just crush it as an entire cross country team. Just because you're eating the right things and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to cook in your room or whatever. Like that would be that's the dream. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that too. I'm right there with you. Just food is a key component to performance in any job that you do. And there's so much that we do every single day that requires a higher level of performance, and food is the best way to start from there. So
Yeah, I mean, I
I'm
think
totally
most
with you.
people are walking around like running on fumes entirely. Just literally I think so many people are eating in a way that you're not actually giving your body real fuel. Like you're literally the reason you feel terrible all the time and have no energy is because you maybe you don't know. And I'm not saying everybody, has the privilege of knowing. I get it, but to the ability to help people figure out that just changing what they eat could change everything. That's been a big one for me. I'm always trying to push that. It's been a
Absolutely.
journey. Yeah.
You're on the right track. You're thinking the right way. I discovered that too a while ago and have tried to hold to it ever since. Just being more selective in what's going to be the right decision. And you know what? I don't even crave um, foods that are counterproductive to my health and my performance in anything that I do. I don't crave fast food uh, like I used to. I don't crave soda. I mean, I don't even really like soda. It's a very special treat every now and again. It still tastes good, but I just don't need it, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
eventually your body wants real fresh food. It craves a fresh apple. It craves oatmeal. It craves pineapple. It wants those things because those taste good and those are real. And it doesn't want French fries anymore. It doesn't want soda. You, your body will tell you what it wants and what it needs, but you can't let your
Yeah.
brain take over.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything that we know humans are exceptionally good at, it's the ability to adapt to their environment if we try. But it doesn't take all that long. Like when Andrew and I kind of one of the first things we did was just cut out sugar. That was just a big one for us. Just cut out refined sugar where it's not necessary, and then eventually that snowballs into eating like entirely whole foods. But the that start within a week, within 2 weeks, you feel completely different, and you don't really want that stuff anymore. Honestly, don't think I could drink a soda now. Like, I see them sometimes. I'll see when someone's got a fridge, and I'm like, that Coke looks good, but I think I'd feel awful. I think I'd feel so sick, just because I've adapted, I've changed, and it is possible to change and to not want those things that you crave anymore if you have the time and have the opportunity to put into it. Pays off big time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. It would change everything if everybody was eating like that. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's one thing that I noticed when I was on deployment was just how people's eating habits and the choices that they would make and how it would reflect in their performance and the choices that are available. It's a tough balance to find, especially when you're in a very tightly controlled environment and your choices are slim. Because on an aircraft carrier, the food options they are finite. They run out of food, and it happens more
Mm-hmm.
often than you'd think because of the pace of operations that are happening in every single day, feeding 5,000 people. It's an incredible operation.
Yeah.
Um, there were a lot. I did all of the workup cycles for this deployment, and I was on the aircraft carrier for that. And I remember there were days that they would just be out of vegetables. We didn't have those anymore. It's just not a thing for the next couple of days. Um, Pasta salad is your vegetable, and that's what we've got available. Um, there was also a time I heard stories of when they ran out of French toast and they were making French toast out of hot dog buns, calling it good, and getting very creative with some food choices.
That one doesn't
It,
bother me as much. It's pretty much the same thing, right?
I guess
It's
so.
just
It's all
bread.
bread. It's just
Oh
a funny
man.
example of how creative they have to get sometimes.
Yeah.
And but I was very lucky because I was on the supply ship. We were the ones giving the food to people, so we
Yeah.
had it a little better. But it's still the same menu that rotates all the time, and there's choices available all the time that are
Right.
counterproductive. Like there's desserts every single meal. Every single meal there's some kind of dessert, pastry, cake, pie,
Mm-hmm.
ice cream every single time. And it's tough to make those like conscious decisions that you don't need that. You don't it's too much, but you
Right.
want it because you're in a stressful environment, you're living at work, you're in an environment where you never can really turn off. So it's a
Yeah.
very
There's
very interesting set of circumstances that cause people to make decisions they may not otherwise make or continue to make their habitual decisions and it's hard to break those.
right. There's ample access, I'm certain, to soda, to candy, to cigarettes, to anything that at the end of what is likely a very hard and probably just awful day where you're going to do it again the next day, it's like, well, then what's the point of even fighting to not eat this Snickers bar? Like, what would be the point in finding that battle? I totally get that that would be someone's mindset, but it is a shame, um, because I guess well, for me, I just want everybody to feel good. It's one of the things I'm thinking about the most with this COVID thing, because I keep looking for the silver linings, and I'll continue to do that. That's who I am. In that, I think if people spend less of their time commuting and less of their time in an office, and you can be home and you can see your kitchen and have contact with your kitchen, and it's difficult to get stuff from restaurants anyway, that you get in a long line of delivery. Maybe people will start using that kitchen in more ways than they were able to before. I have a lot of hope that people's opinions about food are going to change. I mean, even so, like, I bake sourdough, and that has become a huge thing during COVID. I think it's actually kind of a joke, like, that people start baking sourdough during COVID. And for those of us who do it regularly, it actually is kind of a pain because there's no more bread flour at the grocery store. Like, everybody has decided that they're all going to start baking bread all of a sudden, and there's been a big run on flour. That's still not over. That's still going on. But I'm hopeful that if people start doing things like that, it can really change their perspective in a major way that will last even after this thing is over, which who knows when that is. But this
Yeah,
must
I
be a
mean, I can
culture
see
shock for
how
you. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I can see with the bread example that hopefully supply and demand will work it out. It'll be a shock at first, but then all of a sudden we'll start seeing more products available for people to bake their own
Yeah.
bread at home. I mean, that's the great thing about our economy is that it will answer the wants and needs of people who are willing to buy it. Other
Yeah.
things that is surprisingly flying off the shelves during COVID are bikes. I've gone to a couple bicycle shops since I'm into cycling, and bikes are flying off the shelves. People want to get into cycling since they've got nothing better to do, I guess. And um, also, where else did I go? I just recently bought a new car, and people are buying cars all of a sudden and like upgrading their vehicles, and it's really interesting. Just all these phenomenon that are occurring that I'm observing after being removed from it for so long. It's just a
Yeah.
completely different society that I'm seeing and a different patterns of behavior that I wasn't used to when I left. And I think that's the
Right.
question you
Art.
were leading into.
Well, I was just gonna add one more on, which is RVs, because now Andrea and I are working in the RV industry, and it's massive. People are buying RVs left and right now because people are realizing first of all, right now that's a safe way to travel. You can still travel and go everywhere, and an RV is sort of that opportunity to go see outdoor things which are open. Um, so they have been the whole RV industry is going crazy right now, even to the point where it's hard for like suppliers for these manufacturers to build RVs because there's not enough metal. Like it's getting absolutely crazy right now. But that one makes me hopeful too. I think when people travel in RVs, they see things that they don't normally see. So there's good things, man. There's good things happening. But so you get off this deployment, and you're in a world where now everyone's wearing masks, and there's new rules, and you can't go out to restaurants or bars, which I'm sure you enjoy to do at least once after a long deployment. So what do you do in this new world? What's been going on for you?
Well, luckily, after being gone from home for about 8 months straight and being on a ship without being able to set foot on land, just sitting at home has been pretty nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think when we were getting ready to come back home, I was saying to myself, well, you know what? If I have to sit at home and not go anywhere for a while, I think I'd take that right now because I'd really just like to be home. So a little bit
Hmm.
of perspective came into that. I love being at home. I mean, I love where I live. I live in a great area, and I live in a beautiful townhouse that very beachy lifestyle, and it's a lot of fun. So I enjoy being at home. So it works out well for me. But I do enjoy going out to eat, trying new places out, different bars, and we have a lot of cool breweries in Norfolk. Like it's a thing. Breweries are really popular here, so that I love going out and hanging out and trying them and seeing what they got and socializing. But we can't do that anymore. So I'm finding other things to do, like going out and cycling. That's a good socially distanced sport to
Right.
engage in. I still like to run, but I can't go run in large groups. That's not really a thing anymore. And the military,
Hmm.
of course, places their own standards and restrictions. We're not allowed to go eat at restaurants at all. We're not allowed to even eat outside of a restaurant. We have to do takeout only. We're allowed to do essentials like go shopping for home goods and groceries and all that good stuff, but nothing like non-essential is kosher. Uh,
Man.
can't can't ex- can't actually go shopping for clothes just any willy-nilly day like we used to be able to.
Yeah.
Um, we're not allowed to gather large gatherings, large events, or anything. No concerts, of course, and that's one thing I was really looking forward to. I was gonna making plans to like go see some of my favorite artists up in DC if they were going to be around, and I wanted to make plans for all that, and poof, not anymore.
Yeah.
Got to figure something else
Yeah.
out.
How long do you have before your next deployment? Do you already know when you're going back out?
Yes, actually, we're going to go out next January/February whenever we get final word, but it's a quick turnaround.
Yeah, so you get like 4 to 5 months, and that is unfortunate to think too that the situation may not have righted itself in that time, and you might go right back out on deployment in the same fashion, and the time off will have been so limited in what you can actually do, which that stinks. I don't know if there's any other way to say it. Like that's hard, man.
Yeah, it that's how the cookie crumbles. I mean, it it's nothing that I can control though. So I've been
Mm-hmm.
making the best of it, and I think that's one thing that the Navy has gotten me to be very good about, which is to just control what you can control and don't get wrapped around things that are outside of your influence. So just ride along and make the best of what is within your circle of influence. And that's what I'm trying to do, coming back to this new world with, um, and just around the corner, leaving it again.
Yeah. Well, that's like a seven habits thing, isn't it? The whole circle of concern, circle of influence thing. That's good advice.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah, that.
probably that would change a lot of people's perspectives if they embrace that one.
I think we as people tend to really get stressed out about things that we can't control. Like we get stressed out about the weather so much, but there's nothing we can do about it. All we can do is prepare and make the best of it. We stress out so much about um, what the world is going to look like now with this with COVID. It's like that's we can control what we can control. Like we can wear masks. We can avoid situations that take us into those risky environments to where we could possibly perpetuate the situation. And those are the
Right.
things that we can control, and that's the best we can do on an individual level. But getting stressed out about, like me personally, getting stressed out about this next deployment, I know it's going to happen. I know that it's going to happen whether I like it or not. So might as well accept it. And I have this time right now to where I have a little time off from work. I can get my life back in order and upgrade the things that I'd like to upgrade, that I was looking to coming back, and um, just make the most of it. This is a very special time for me in my life when I'm like being as operational as I can be, with
Mm-hmm.
flying and get learning a lot of experience. And it's good. It overall it's good for me to be in this position. And with the whole COVID thing, it makes it a little more difficult to take advantage of what little time I have off to do what I like to do. But just gonna make the most of it, just like with deployment and training and all that good stuff.
Yep. You will get to see your girl, right? They can't tell you not to do that.
Actually, technically not allowed to travel outside of 50 miles in the area. Um,
No.
without like a special permission of some kind. So it's kind of like
Oh,
it's
jeez.
difficult, but luckily she's got a little bit less restrictive of a policy on her. She's also in the military. She's in the army. She's in medical school, so she's at the forefront of what's going on with all this. So she's been a very good asset to have to show me the ropes on what's going on and how it works and all that good stuff. And she's very good about coming down to Norfolk and visiting me because she likes it down here a lot more than she likes DC, interestingly enough.
Yeah, that's a wild town up in DC, man. I don't I don't think I could do it on an extended basis.
Yeah,
It's a whole
it's a
different way of things
fascinating
up there.
place.
Yeah, it's
A
got to be
lot of
different
a
now
lot
though.
of
I
interesting
remember
people.
the times that I've spent up there, the thing that drives me the craziest obviously is how much like commuting traffic there is. Like that place is just so busy. Literally, even if you're just like going anywhere near the Pentagon, the sheer number of people who work at the Pentagon is insane. Um, but I imagine that even looks quite different right now. Probably a lot less tourism at the mall. It's probably a decent time to go walk around if it's open. Maybe it's not.
Yeah, I think you could be out there. I'm sure there are people out there. I haven't been up there since all of this started. I don't think I intend to go up there anytime soon due to all the restrictions and all that. But
Right.
I love it. I haven't seen the traffic up there any different than what it could be like in, say, Los Angeles, because I like to think that I'm a veteran of seeing the worst traffic that most of our largest cities have to offer. I've seen Atlanta at its worst. I've seen Los Angeles at its worst. I've seen San Diego at its worst. I've seen New Orleans at its worst. I've seen New York City at its worst. Philadelphia. It's like it's all traffic. It's all the same. It happens everywhere.
It's just nonsense. Oh man, I could not live like that. That's not me. I
Yeah.
like the Monticello life. You know, back in the day where the farthest you drove was like half an hour and there was no traffic anywhere. That's the way
Yeah.
for me. That's uh,
Yeah,
that's how I
definitely.
do it.
I try to just live as close as I can to work and have simple routes to take and not have to get on the
Yeah.
highway and depend on that. I think that's
Right.
the key for me living in these areas, and I kind of have to since this is where the naval bases are.
Right. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you are doing good, man, which is awesome to hear. That's number one. And you've done some cool things. I'm impressed, and I think it sounds like you're on a path that's right for you. So, kudos to you, man. Congratulations on how everything's going. It's been good to hear from
Thank you
you.
very much. Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
letting me talk a little bit about it and sharing some perspectives that were kind of boiling up there on deployment. Not much else to think about sometimes when you're out there at sea. So it was good. Um, Thank you very much for inviting me and asking me to join you.
Of course, man. Well, thank you also to all of our listeners. Thank you to Steven for being here, and thank you to our sponsor, Track Farms. If you go to trackfarms.com/strangers, you'll get that 15% off those CBD products. Go check them out. Thanks, everybody. As always, we will see you on the next episode.